So it's my pleasure to introduce Adam Andolina, the Chief Procurement Officer at KeyBank. Adam has extensive experience driving innovation in procurement and a keen program that he has developed over the last 12 years while working at KeyBank. Adam has transformed the talent process and procurement, and will be sharing that with us today from his home in Ohio. So welcome, Adam.
Welcome. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's our pleasure, really. Honestly, your session was so great at Spark. I really thought everyone would really enjoy it going forward. So thank you again for sharing this. How are you basically getting settled in on remote working and your team?
Yeah, I mean, personally, I'm a big believer in like development, challenge and support. So the challenge of learning to work from home and school my children from home at the same time is an interesting one. I'm normally a work from the office guy, but I found that I've adjusted pretty well, and it's going well. My team's doing great. I'm very lucky to be on a very talented team of professionals that I can trust, and they're doing a great job. And I think adapting well to a very challenging time for all of us.
Yeah, it's been amazing. We've done some think tanks and some collaborative stuff with all different sourcing leaders across the U.S. and globe at times. I am absolutely amazed at what you guys are all doing. It is unbelievable, and you're all at sort of the center of this right now with dealing with suppliers and supply chain. I thank you guys all, because I know over the last 4 years, the work that you all put in to make sure that everything is safe and secure, and that you've got backup and risk addressed. It's just been, it's one thing that I know I can feel really secure about with you all. So it's great. And before we dive into this session, Adam, I would love for you to share a bit more about your background.
Yeah, so I'm the Chief Procurement Officer over at KeyBank in Cleveland. So we are a team that handles indirect spend and all kind of procurement and sourcing needs for our entity coast to coast. I've been in the department a little over a decade now, and now run the team. I've had various roles, from an individual contributor. I started out with my own book of business and managed a few small teams, ran an integration project, and we purchased another bank, and really had a good time with it. Prior to procurement, though, I had never done, I have no kind of supply chain background since being asked to step over to procurement in 2010. So by background, I'm an HR guy. I have an undergraduate degree in psychology and minor in sociology. I never sort of set out to get into the field, but I started in 2010, and I just love it. Every day is something new. The past few weeks have proved that to be true. It's always interesting work and impactful to our organization by way of making sure that we can service our customers and impact our bottom line. So I love the function. I love the variability. I love the team, and I've learned a lot over the past 10 years.
Well, that's great. I think from here we're moving on to a poll question. So the first poll is really talking about top skills. So as organizations move forward, team goals, it's more important than ever to have a roadmap for finding and nurturing and developing top talent. Oh, sorry, this was so shocking. The poll just came up for everybody. Before Adam walks us through the KeyBank program, we wanted to see where everyone else was on the call. So if you could just take a minute, fill out the session. Adam, where do you think we're going to land here?
I think we're going to be, I would say, probably either 1 or 3. I think people generally have something in place, but it could always be improved. And I would say that about the KeyBank approach as well.
Yeah, I would say you're right. In most companies, they have something in place, and we always can improve. One of the things that I've been embracing while we're going through this is really digging into older processes that we had and looking to see where we can maybe tighten them or improve them, or what might change that would make something better. So I have found that to be a bright spot in what, what we're looking at right now in our work environment. Do we have the poll results yet? So you were right, spot on. Organization has had one in place, but it could use some work. So that's perfect. So Adam, do you want to take it away?
Yeah, look, so I think kind of to start today, what we're going to cover and kind of why I talk about this, right? So when I talked to Scout about a year ago about doing a talk at Spark, they sort of said, what would be of interest to you? And I really think talent management is something that I love. It's a topic I'm passionate about. And I think it's an interesting one because it cuts across all industries and functions. So it's applicable to almost anything, but I find it very applicable to procurement itself. Again, and I think, my bias might be coming into this function and kind of this career from the outside. I think it's something that I've learned over time, and I've been able to pick it up, and we've been able to get other professionals up to speed because we, really care about our talent and how we go about building it. So, talent is also something that it can be really reactionary to. You have a team in place. Maybe you've inherited the team. Maybe you've joined the team. Maybe you're building the team. And you have people come and go in your organization, and you sort of, if you don't take a minute to sort of sit back and think about what you want it to be in the future, it's very easy to just be reactionary to it. And it's hard to make it a priority. You kind of have to actively do that. The other kind of side of the coin is that depending on your organization or background, a lot of companies will leave that to human resources, and I'm a recovering human resources professional. I think HR can be there to help you in your journey, but talent, like business results, like sales, like revenue, are ultimately the responsibility and accountability of the leadership team of the group. I think one of the things is that talent brings, in my mind, consistency to many different environments. I find it ironic that was a statement a couple months ago. If you have a talented team that you can trust and that you have faith in and that can react really well to different situations, then you can kind of deal with almost anything, which is a lot of what we're seeing today. We kind of call it freedom within a framework here. You can get, various people to kind of follow processes, but if you can build a team that can think on their feet and adapt, then you can be confident in them getting work done so you can focus on other initiatives. What I really wanted to do today was talk about our journey. Our approach is built within the context and culture of our company. It doesn't mean it's right. I think some of the principles are applicable, but I do want to share our journey, kind of where it's gone well, where we've had bumps in the road. Hopefully I can save you a couple missteps. And then I'm happy to share, but I'm also really interested in learning. So you feel free to ask questions or let me know what works for your organization. So then just a little bit about KeyBank. So interesting company, kind of you can see by our footprint, Maine to Alaska and some blank spaces in between. We do a lot of different things. We're sort of, in simplest terms, like a Chase or Bank of America for the middle market. We have a lot of different services, a lot of different geographies, and we can do that for middle market clients. So that's kind of our sweet spot. As a team, we manage from procurement about $1.5 billion in spend. That's coast to coast in all categories. There's about 60 people in our organization, but we have a lot of things beyond just sourcing, right? So we have a third-party risk management team, which is big in a bank, but applies to many industries. We have a legal team, so we have our own team of lawyers within procurement, and then we have a solutions team. So we run various technologies. Scout is one of the important ones. Also run Ariba and Concur and a few others, and we kind of serve our employee base that way. Our spend is mainly indirect, and 85% of our people actually sit in Cleveland, like literally in the same basic office space. but not for the last 3 weeks. Now we are all working from home. My team is now fully virtual. There's no one that needs to be in the office at this time. The safety of our employees and customers are number one. So we are all on our business continuity plans. And as you can see from the beautiful background, I am working from my bedroom today. How do we build a model of strengths and constraints? So I think one of the things is we're in Cleveland, Ohio. It's a stable to slightly shrinking population base. We are the largest bank in the area. We are kind of one of the only major banks left in Cleveland. There's others in Columbus and Cincinnati, but there's not necessarily a hotbed of procurement talent that knows how to work in our environment. So we've had to build a talent model within those constraints. We've essentially had to build, to use a baseball term, like a farm system, where we have committed to grow our own talent from early in our career up, because getting people to come in and take over categories that are from outside the organization, either you can't find them or we have to move them from different parts of the country. And I love Cleveland. I've been here 20 years, but if I'm calling San Francisco and say come to Cleveland, I don't always get that call back. So this model's worked really well for us. We're a 200-year-old bank here in Ohio. So we built a model that works for us in the culture and constraints that we have. So if we can move on to the next slide, please. I thought it was just kind of important to share, how did our journey play out? And I'd add another bubble to this slide now about the environment we're in. But really, in 2008, 2009, I had just started out in banking, and the financial crisis had just hit, right? So it was a really fluid, tough environment, a lot like it feels like today. Except within banking, banks were literally going down overnight. You'd leave on a Friday, and then Monday, 2 banks would be taken over. There was huge cost pressures. Once we kind of got through the initial wave, banks were doing these massive cost takeout programs. KeyBank was one of them. We had launched a $300 million cost takeout, and one of those pillars of the cost takeout plan was procurement. And we were drafting people from different parts of the business to take over and do procurement work. I was in HR. I was supporting a few lines of business, and they asked me to come do a procurement project. And that's sort of how it started, right? So there was an attempt in that moment to pull procurement from the back office into a strategic partner with our lines of business. And we pulled talent from across the organization, some pretty good players. And we made the commitment to teach them procurement and give them support. So that worked really well for a couple of years. But then sort of once the crisis had passed, or at least we've been getting into the new normal, you kind of see this 2010 to 2014 norming, forming. And not surprisingly, a team of people that were pulled out of the business in a crisis to run a giant cost takeout program were not necessarily built to work together on a day-to-day BAU environment, right? So we didn't have a ton of sound processes. We had a lot of type A personalities who were trying to drive things fairly hard, very fast. It led to kind of a lack of engagement and trust across the team. We got in this cycle where we hit a pretty big turnover spike, which was tough because we had some really good people who just learned how to do their job. We had a series of reorgs that, created some instability, and kind of in the later years is when we realized we really needed a solid plan. We needed a talent management strategy, or this just wasn't going to work. And that's where a lot of what we're going to talk here today was really born. It was born back then, and it's taken years and years to mature. So we sort of hit our stride in 2015 to 2018. KeyBank was doing really well. Our team had several major projects we were running. Our bank bought another bank, which was the largest post-financial crisis acquisition. And we were able to take a lead seat in sort of getting the synergy there, which was a great project, and really relied on the talent we had, because we had to take 20% of the department and put them on one project and say the remaining 80% have to run what we normally do. And you know, right around when we get in past 2018, 2019 plus, kind of that's when we kind of got into this new era of being change ready, right? So we've started looking at things like automation, new systems, new ways of approaching our lines of business. That's also when I took over as Chief Procurement Officer. And now we are having to act on change ready and talent because we're entering an environment that in a lot of ways feels a lot like 2008, 2009. So that's, again, a little bit of our journey. I hopefully it contextualizes sort of why we did certain things and why those things work for us and might not be perfect for everybody else. All right, so we'll kind of get into talent management cornerstones. I'm going to talk a little bit about sort of like what is the philosophy behind this, and then we'll get into sort of like what does it mean on a day-to-day basis. So these are just sort of generally how we approach it. So first of all, I am, and I think our department in a lot of ways is a big play to your strength shop. So we try to hire people that are complementary to each other and look at what they bring to the table by way of skills beyond procurement subject matter expertise. We feel that if we can hire complementary skills, we can allow people to play to their strengths. You know, if you're great at communications, we'll give you some more of the communications work. If you're good at solving processes, we might bring you into some process work outside your day job. We also, and I am a big believer in this, is we try not to focus on our weaknesses. I think if you get your performance, like your growth plans, people tend to try to want to fix what they think is wrong with them. And what I'll normally tell people is like focusing exclusively on your weaknesses is a long, hard road to being average. You're good at something. You're probably really good at something. And if you could be the best at that one thing, you're going to be the best version of you. I will say though, caveat there, like there are some weaknesses that are fatal, right? Like if you're not reliable, if you're not accountable, if you breach trust, that the rest won't matter. But I'm talking about little things. If you're maybe not the strongest writer, or you're maybe not the best at analytics, those are things that you can work with your team to sort of use their strengths to build a better end goal. One of the other things we say is we're kind of CEO of your own career. And my boss sort of coined that one, so I'll give them credit for that. The biggest thing here is each person owns their career. Our department, our company, myself, we can support and we will, and we'll do everything we can, but you own your career. Procurement can be a career or it can be a stop along the way. I thought it would be a 2 to 3 year gig 10 years ago, and I'm still doing it. And we've had people who come in and do, a couple years and then move back to the business. I think learning how to work with third parties, negotiate, understand the market, manage costs, every business leader needs those. But ultimately, you're only going to be successful if you feel ownership over your own career. And that's the only way that we can make our model work and give people control over where they're going in life. Another one is to know your business. And your business is not just procurement, right? You are working within a company. Depending on the size of the company, you might be, one of a very few people doing procurement, or you might be at a huge organization or something mid-sized, kind of like KeyBank, where you're supporting lines of business. Generally, what I'd say is your lines of business, unless you're really lucky, probably don't really understand what you do in procurement, not at a very technical level. I've been doing this for over 10 years. My wife, my mom, nobody knows what I do. So it's not, it's not a career everybody understands. You get a seat at the table with your line of business by being a procurement expert, but you stay at the table by being an expert in their business, knowing what drives it, and then knowing the role third parties play, but not by showing how technically expert you can be in procurement. And then the last one is kind of talent is a team sport. So everyone has to build talent, not just leaders. In our organization, we expect our more senior level individual contributors to help grow our more junior folks. And we also expect people to generally share their knowledge as much as they can with others. And we challenge our employees at every level. I'll often go to our analysts and our more junior level people and ask them kind of, what am I missing? There's a lot they know that I don't know. There's a lot of ways to approach things that are more efficient that they understand that I don't. So you can't be too proud as to ask for help from everyone in your company. So that's just kind of the cornerstones. The rest of it is built on. And if we go to the next slide, this is the employee life cycle. It's a framework. It's not perfect, and it's not the only one. There's many life cycles, right? Like there's many, same as many procurement life cycles, 5 steps, 7 steps, 11 steps, whatever. I think you can choose any life cycle that works for you, but it's important to have some sort of framework so that you can understand, like, am I meeting the employees where they are at multiple steps, right? And it allows you to plan as a group, plan at the group level, like at the department level, but also reach the individual. And as you can see it, right, it just kind of shows where people are. So you bring people into the organization through recruiting. There's some form of onboarding and training. You're going through career development conversations as well as performance management conversations. And then there's this phase, we call it employee re-engagement, right? So people in your organization are either on an annual basis, they should be either committing to stay or realizing it's time to go. And leaving is not a bad thing, right? Like you should be exporting, or hopefully be exporting, talent to your organization better than letting them go to the competitors. But I think having that conversation and making it a safe space for people to understand, we don't expect you to stay forever. Let me know when you think it's time to go. Let's work on that together. It's just something, a little bit of a different approach, but something that's worked well for us. So that's a little bit about what we're going to talk about in the back half, is sort of how do you tactically deal with each of these life cycle phases.
Yeah, I agree on those points, especially really working with an employee when they're ready to grow to that next step. And then sometimes growing that next step is not with your team, and it might be heartbreaking, but you want to help them because you've been working with them for all that time to help get them to that next step overall. So I'd love to take a minute to hear from everyone on their top skills in their what their organization looks for when they're recruiting and hiring. And please use the polling function. We'll get the answers back shortly. Just take your jump at it. Is it skills that align directly to your job description that you're looking for, flexibility and adaptability, or strong cultural fit for the team and the company? So Adam, what are some of the things that are really the top skills that you look for?
Look, I think for us, the way we do it, again, we tend to promote from within when we have an opening, and then try to backfill at more junior levels, and that's where we commit to sort of really building talent. There's some things that are sort of non-negotiable for us. I mean, we always say, like, you need to have this certain level of intellectual capacity and horsepower and inquisitiveness. So, right amount of kind of brains and horsepower. Attitude, I think, is really important, and effort are really important. So if I take brains, attitude, and effort is the most important things, because I found those are the three that we have the least ability to impact, right? So,
yeah.
We hire adults. If you don't have the right attitude or effort at that point, it's something that I'm not going to be able to really make an impact on. But I can teach you how to run an RFP and how to negotiate a contract. There's more to it than that, but I think if I go with the absolute non-negotiables, brains, attitude, and effort for us.
Yeah, well, it's funny you say that. When I was growing up, that was the only thing my dad cared about on my report card, was my attitude and effort. And he didn't care about grades. It was just all about attitude and effort. And I agree wholeheartedly that you can't change that. That's just the way it is. So strong culture fit seems to be coming in first. But I mean, honestly, all these things are important. Skills that align directly to their job description, and last place, flexibility and adaptability. So let's jump into the next slide. Adam, you may be present. Oh, good.
Yeah, no, I'm here. So look, we'll kind of jump into these. I'll probably hit some at a little bit more detail than others, but on the recruiting phase, the one that I'd say is probably most important is the first one, which is kind of always be recruiting, right? So we, as a leadership team, openly and actively discuss kind of what sort of candidates or people are we meeting out there in the market, even when we're fully staffed. But by the time you have an opening is not the time where you want to start looking for candidates. So we always make it a time to actively go out and meet people as much as we can. We ask our team members for referrals. I ask other executives from across the banks for referrals. I talk to our college team. I'll talk to college folks if they're looking to join the bank. I think it's important to meet as many people as you can, and then typically I'll talk to folks. Even the first time I meet them, what I usually say is something like, "Look, this meeting is more for you than me. Let me tell you our story. Let me tell you what we do. Let me tell you what procurement is. You probably don't know. And if it's interesting, then we can talk again and we'll talk about you. And if it's not interesting, I just appreciate your time. A little bit more about our organization. Tell your friends." We've been able to fill most jobs, in probably under 30 days because we have a pretty good candidate pipeline in a lot of ways. And when we haven't had openings for a while, like we actually just had one where we hadn't had openings in one group for like probably 2 years. And we ended up interviewing like 10 to 12 people for one job. But we knew we'd probably have more turnover. So we said, look, we're going to hire one, but we got 3 more people we'd love to have. And hopefully one of them will join the team at some point. Next, kind of hire the best available talent. Again, if you can hire a more junior level person, I would say if you see someone as a long-term higher ceiling, if they just have more talent building blocks that you can use and can really go places, then I would go with that person over someone who maybe has a lower long-term upside but has a bit more procurement subject matter expertise, because you need to have a long-term view on talent. I think this kind of goes into promote from within wherever possible. Just one guiding principle we have is we try to not hire anybody that we don't envision we can't promote at least once. So you have the job ahead of you. We're really interviewing to see, like, if we do it right and if they are kind of the person they seem to be, can we promote them at least once? Twice is ideal. And that's how we sort of try to make decisions around recruiting. But recruiting is a team sport. Everyone should be recruiting as often as possible. So I'll go to the next one, and I'll take questions on any of this stuff later. I'm just going to try to blow through it as fast as I can. Onboarding. So this is a big one. Own your onboarding program. I don't mean like, do they get a laptop? Do they fill out their I-9? Do they know how to get in the building type onboarding? I mean, do they know how to work within your organization? So what we've done, and this was probably one of the heaviest lifts we had, is that we realized if we were going to run this model that we needed to commit to setting the baseline of knowledge for what our people would have. So probably in 2014, we created this program. It's about 20 classes. We teach them ourselves. So it's not third-party content. We have developed it internally over time. It probably runs between, 12 and 15 total hours, because some are half hours, some of them are longer. And it's usually about twice a year. Usually we need about four employees to do it, maybe max of 8, and we'll put them through as a cohort, and they will learn from the people in the department, and we'll sort of level set on what's important. We'll teach not only procurement skills, but we'll teach about the company culture. We'll teach about systems. We'll teach negotiation skills, all sorts of stuff. So it's everything from how to do procurement to what are our expectations on just general business acumen. And we find by having people from all over the department learn from people from all over the department and go through this cohort, it helps kind of get people acclimated to the culture, and not just the culture of their very specific team. We create an open door culture. Like I said, the leaders teach onboarding. Myself as CPO and prior CPOs teach multiple classes. We sort of invite people to come in and talk to us about it, to create an environment where we're sort of openly stating, like, we get you don't know everything. We get you're learning. So ask us questions. It's okay. It's safe. We expect it. And then in a couple of years, once you know what you're doing, we expect that you're going to answer questions for other people as we bring them on board. And then if you're a leader, a mentor, it's an expectation of our leaders, our managers, our senior people, that they're mentoring formally people within not just the department, but the company, and then informally the people on their team, right? Like our senior level individual contributors, they're good at procurement. They'll hit their savings numbers. They'll serve their clients. But the ones who are really the best and differentiate the most are the ones that are making us better as a department. So that's a little bit about kind of how we handle onboarding. If we go to the next one, career development. So we tried as best we. I think it's important to try to make your organization as simple as possible, at least from a career architecture standpoint, right? So I know that each category has nuances. Marketing is different than hardware and telecom, and benefits. They're all very unique. But we tried to set up an organization where you kind of knew where you stood. We have 4 levels of individual contributors, and it's kind of clear what the differences are between those and sort of what the career path looks like. And each team is set up on that same architecture, which allows us to move people from one team to the other, right? So that took some work. You usually need to engage HR on that, but I would tell you to simplify wherever you can, and just understand that each role has its own unique complexity that you're never going to fully document in a job description accurately anyway. Given everything that's changed in the last month, I'd say all our job descriptions need to be updated anyway, right? So balance development. You need to talk to your people about short-term, kind of what are expectations for the roles and how do you get there, but also long-term, where are they trying to get to? If someone's trying to grow up and have a career in procurement, then even if short-term they have some things they need to work on, you also want to be thinking about the long-term, because you don't want to keep going on annual cycles. And if long-term they plan to leave the department, then, how do you think through that a little bit differently? Where do you want to spend more time developing them for the future versus the immediate term? And then kind of support an open learning culture. Like, again, I think you need to make it a safe space to ask questions and look for feedback. And that starts with your leadership team, and it starts with the person heading your department. Again, I try to walk around my group and ask people, like, how would you approach this? This is the issue I'm dealing with. Like what am I not thinking of? And kind of model that it's okay to ask questions and not have the answers. But I will say that needs to be genuine. If you ask people for their input and thoughts and then don't use it, or at least don't credibly show that you're thinking through it, it becomes very clear that it's not really the culture you're saying it is. Let's go on to the next one, performance management. I think the first one, kind of clear line of sight to company results. This is why I love procurement the most, and kind of why I like to stay here. I've been in HR. I've been in kind of marketing capacities at different companies. The value prop is a little bit harder to explain sometimes, especially if you have some hard-nosed executives. But procurement, you're probably in charge of making sure your supply chain's working, taking out third-party costs, and taking risk away from your organization. And it's usually really clear to tell that story, and it allows your people to focus and prioritize in a really meaningful way. And you can show how the work of your department goes directly to the bottom line and the success of your company. We try to always drive towards broader wins. Everybody has their own goals. Every unique person has their goals, but procurement categories, if you're organized around categories, tend to come in a cyclical nature, right? If you just took everything out to bid and you're on 3-year contracts, the next 2 years are going to be a little bit lighter. And you might really blow it out of the water 1 year on goals, and then you might be underwater for a year or two because there's less opportunity. We try to focus on goals at the team level most of all, and then sort of just be open and honest with each other about who has, who's underwater, who has some capacity, how do we move people around to drive towards the broader wins. And that might mean that for, say, 6 months, I have a person from team A who's going to go work on tough stuff for team C, right? And we just understand that, we'll kind of consider that when we're doing calibration and performance reviews, but there's no point in using someone, every hour, every effort they have to beat their head against the wall to save, $50,000 when the team over there is $500,000 they just can't execute on, right? Like, you got to do what's right for the company. And then freedom within a framework. Look, this is a culture thing for us, but I guess what I'd say is we are probably less mature and stringent around processes and policies than other companies, or not, I would say companies, within the procurement framework, other organizations. We are big on saying, like, look, you have goals, we have a general framework, we have expectations that you all need to hit, but we hired you because we think you're smart, talented, and we want you to kind of do it your way as best you can, but understand you're on a bigger team. And, like, you need to stay within the guardrails, but if we're within the guardrails, like, we'll allow for some creativity. And also that allows us to hold people accountable to outcomes and not activity. Our new CEO is very big on that, but it's something we've done for a long time. I'll give Chris credit by saying you never mistake activity for impact. In the end, we are here to impact the organization, not just follow processes to create activity. And then employee kind of re-engagement. You can never shortchange communication. I think that is probably more important right now than, I won't say ever, but it is crucial right now. You need to have a thought, you need to have an approach to communication and sort of a framework you're operating in. Some communication is going to be virtual, via email, via webinar, etc. Some of it's going to be live, physical. Some of it's going to be structured, having a town hall. Some of it's going to be unstructured, just walking around, having a team picnic, those types of things. And if people can trust that you're regularly going to communicate to them, they won't sort of panic when you start communicating to them. If you regularly communicate to them and then all of a sudden they start seeing a lot, they read into it. They don't know why you're doing it. So we try to be more thoughtful about it. Also gives the opportunity to celebrate successes and failures broadly, right? What went well? How do we share that? How do we hold up people for doing interesting things? And then where do we try something that failed? And what did we learn from it? And if you're pushing the envelope, you're going to fail. And if there are only penalties for failure and never sort of something we can learn from it, people will not want to put themselves out there. We talk about support, growth, and exit plans. Again, a certain amount of your employees every day are planning their exit from your organization, right? And either they're going to tell you about it or they're not. We find it's better to be part of that conversation, even if they always don't go the way we want. I've lost a few really good people and friends in the past year. They've left for much bigger and better opportunities and things that they really deserve. And I'm proud of them. But in more than 50% of the instances, I was talking to them a week before the decision got made, and we had sort of understood what exactly was going on. And that way you don't have people leaving for the wrong reasons, going to organizations where they might not ultimately be successful or where they didn't understand where they stood with you. But you need a certain amount of turnover to keep a healthy organization. If people aren't growing and aren't challenged, and if they've been in the same role for a really long time, that's where disengagement steps in. It's hard when people are really growing and pushing. They feel stretched, but they usually feel the most engaged. And then kind of formalize or focus on succession planning. I guess what I'd say is you should have a working succession plan for like almost every role in your department. And like size and scale matters, right? So if it's a couple hundred people, that doesn't work. But what we tend to do is talk about it sort of from the top down. So we say, like, look, if one of our senior level people leave, what would we do? Like, well, if they left, we might consider promoting this person or this person. Like, all right, well, then what we do for their role. And then you just sort of scenario play all those out. You never know exactly what's going to happen, but by having that conversation and just sort of doing some light scenario modeling, it makes it easier. It also kind of allows you to play chess and not checkers, right? Where if somebody leaves, all you're doing is backfilling the one role, right? You start thinking about like, okay, maybe I can make 3 or 4 moves here. And these 3 or 4 people have been enrolled for a while and they're good and they could grow. And if I stretch them a little bit, they might really respond and get some new team dynamics and new life in the organization. So succession planning and succession planning sounds very formal, but just sort of understanding what you would do if different people left, I think is important in a healthy discussion, because you'll also figure out where do you have alignment around certain people? Where are you consistent? These are our best people. These people are ready to grow. And where do you have differing opinions, and why, and what does that mean? And how do you kind of get a consensus or understand what, where and why people have different perspectives? Okay. A lot of talking. I'm sorry.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it is, but it's all great stuff, and it's all so accurate. So let's look at the next poll question. What are the biggest areas of focus for talent development this year at your organization? Building and strengthening a community of peer mentors, focusing on training and enablement, establishing a solidified and streamlined process for training, or offering learning opportunities beyond an employee-specific role requirements. So the polls just popped up, and it's definitely very interesting to see where everyone is focusing their efforts on in this upcoming year. Adam, what do you think you'll see, or what sort of, with the environment right now, what are you and your team looking at?
Well, I mean, look, I think that question is probably I'd answer it very different today than I would a month ago. If I looked back a month, I think, one of the things we were talking about is many of our categories are getting more complex, but they're also getting more similar to other categories. So we do a lot of deals, regardless of kind of what it is, that all have similar characteristics. So they're professional services deals, or as a service deals, or more SLA kind of sourcing driven. So how can we create best practices that cut across? I think now we'll probably be focusing a lot on lessons learned from this. What went well? How do we learn from that? What didn't go well, and how do we learn from that? And how do we reorient our team and our suppliers to the new normal that has to be able to deal with situations like this more effectively?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things, those are great. So focusing on training and enablement is top, and then offering learning opportunities second, establishing process for training third, and building and strengthening community of peer mentors. So that's third. And we'll go back to the slides, but what we're seeing overall, I think, across the community is people really having some really great successes. So when I was first out there, I think like on the 17th, we did a collaborative thing with some of the customers. And one of the things that I was really proud of Procurement was what they got their companies enabled. They got them right out there and enabled for everyone to work from home. So Adam, why don't you talk about some of the quick wins and things that you guys have seen?
Yeah, I mean, look, these are just try to make it there's a lot to digest in there. So just a couple things maybe to get going on if this sounds right. And I'd be interested if you think I missed some things or you don't like the approach, because I have a lot to learn in this space. So you'll have my email, feel free to reach out. But so kind of some quick wins. I would say number one is begin recruiting. Go meet some people. Do whatever you can to get yourself out there and understand where some talent you could pull from. Invest in your employees and kind of give your junior folks a chance. We try to bring some of our junior level people to more senior level meetings. Maybe the first time they're just there to listen and take notes, but then we give them the opportunity to kind of speak and present. It creates some risk. Things aren't going to always go great, but those reps and creating a safe place for reps are important. And then again, if I could say, when you do goal setting or you're coaching, like as much as you can to connect what people do to the company, it will create a lot of engagement. Those are more quicker wins. Longer term things you could do. Again, I think an onboarding program, it's a heavy lift. I don't want to make it sound simple, but it's been really impactful for us. Having a planful communications approach and process is really important. That's not necessarily always a strength of procurement professionals, right? I rely on my team a lot for that. I can usually talk, but thinking about exactly how to message things and in what venue, I rely on some very smart people on my team to help me with that. And then kind of simplify and make it as straightforward as possible, the career infrastructure. People should know where they can go in procurement, and that will also help them know when it's time to go. So those are some things, maybe not easy, but longer term, some things to focus on.
Excellent. And I just wanted to touch on Scout a little bit before we moved on to questions. So Scout was built over the last 5 years, and honestly, we built it on a source to contract a platform, looking at the bigger overall picture. We were recently acquired by Workday, and so we're looking at, what does that really mean? So Scout itself took a different approach to our platform, because our approach was to have it be really simple. We started in our name, we started with RFPs, and we again built out this source to contract platform that allowed really the procurement people to be able to easily collaborate with the business and with their suppliers. So everything that we've done has really helped really focus on the end user, the customer, because when you have a SaaS product, you really are truly a partner. Anything we do to our product really affects what you're doing on your daily basis. When Workday acquired us, there were so many similarities in our businesses about how we have put customers first, et cetera. And Workday is certainly known for its HCM and finance products. They have an amazing foothold with their collaborative platform again. And then, they have people at the center of their business as well. So when you look at this sort of diagram on the page here, you'll see all the different options. And in Adam's case, they are actually Workday customers and Scout customers, and they were separately in both camps, but definitely in both places. But we're hoping in a big picture that if you need some kind of collaborative solution in your procurement needs, that you might want to take a look at Scout. So with that said, let's go on to questions and see what we have out there. So Adam, I wanted to go on, I had just my own question, because I really liked what you said about holding people to outcomes, activity over impact. So as we kind of break that down, because I love that, so many people think, well, I did this, and this. So do you have anything that you could relate procurement wise with your team where the outcomes are so much more important than we all know it, but I just love some kind of story. That would be great.
Yeah, look, I think super tactical example, right? But you on a quarterly basis, we'll sit down and sort of look at how much we call it deal flow our different people have, which is basically how many contracts have they had to kind of negotiate to signature for their lines of business. In different categories, you might have someone who did, 50 contracts, and then someone who might have done 10. And it would be real easy in that sense to think the person who does 50 is just busier, right? Or working harder or whatever. But if you could sort of look at, all right, not only that activity, but what were the impacts of those deals? Kind of, did they enable a new capability for our clients and lines of businesses? Did they save the company a meaningful amount of money? It sort of gives all those things. So we try to look at, a holistic amount of metrics and understand what is that driving for the company, and not just get looked at, how many widgets did they process. And again, I think that works for us culturally. It does at times. We align by lines of business, which means certain lines of businesses are have higher volume parts of the year or lower, and we kind of have to ride that wave a little bit as opposed to just having deals come in and us pushing them to different people. But that's just one example for us.
Great. And Meg, do you want to take it away with the questions? For some reason in my question panel, I'm not seeing any of them.
Sure thing, I'd be happy to. So let's see, someone's asking, Adam, what are your thoughts on recruiting talent internally at KeyBank versus externally? Have you found more success with one or the other?
Look, I think recruiting internally is really different company to company, right? So I would say in some organizations, recruiting or having talent move internally is not viewed as a positive thing, right? Some people view it as poaching, right? I've been in organizations like that. That's not how KeyBank is. I am very much a proponent of recruiting internally. I have typically, if I had to estimate, 30 to 40% of anybody's learning curve is learning the company they work for, because they just don't know. There's so much language and culture and nuance that you just don't, you walk in and you don't see it. And you, like me, I've been at KeyBank longer than I ever expected. So many things I know just because I know how the place works. So if I had two candidates of equal ability, I would go with the internal one all day long. And again, sometimes culturally that's cool, sometimes it's not. I will say this though, if you are going to be a team, if your culture will allow for you to be a team that recruits internally, you need to also export talent. Meaning you have to actively work to try to get people when they've reached kind of where they want to be in their procurement career to go to the lines of business, because you need to be able to tell that story of being a talent hub. It's not just always bringing people in. It's supplying the broader organization, being a good corporate citizen on building talent for others as well.
That's an excellent point. Meg, what's the next question?
We have a question from Mark asking, are the lawyers in your sourcing organization corporate counsel or just deal-making lawyers?
I like that term. They are lawyers, so they're all JDs. They report directly to me in procurement. So they are procurement employees. They have sort of I don't know how you want to call it. They basically have a dotted line to the general counsel, and we have agreement from the general counsel that they can perform this specific legal activity of negotiating third-party deals on behalf of the bank. So it's very well kind of governed, and then I meet with the general counsel on a monthly basis just to make sure that we're staying aligned. But I find it is a best practice. We are definitely able to move much faster and also prioritize deals across the enterprise better by having kind of our own dedicated resources.
Okay, great. We've got a question from Stuart asking, do you feel it is important for companies to know how much it costs to hire talent per individual?
Do I think it's important for employers? I guess I don't know if I have an opinion on that. I mean, I think if you're trying to make the case for being more proactive and hiring and sort of promoting from within or promoting across the organization or doing some of this stuff, then I believe that could help make the case. Again, we got hit with the constraint of, if I filled our more senior individual contributor level roles from external, it would be a more expensive proposition, and I would have people that would have more of a learning curve. By promoting from within, I can sort of help people grow, and I can make a commitment to them that allows me to have a better line of sight on managing my employee expenses long term. So I think you could use it as a pillar. I don't know if I have real deep thinking beyond that, but it's a really good question. I hadn't thought of it.
Okay, and then I think a great question to close with is, what do you use for career development on sourcing and negotiation skills? Any training, book clubs, conferences?
Yeah, so we have built probably, again, maybe a third of our classes are specifically on kind of sourcing, right? Like we do a couple rounds of negotiation, we do legal 101 and legal 101 and 102. We do how to run a market event, how to create market dynamics, which is a little bit broader than just how to tangibly run an RFP. So we do that in onboarding, and then we do make a commitment to hold a travel budget for our department that allows us to send people to conferences, which generally are more related to the categories that they run, or if they're a subject matter expert like a lawyer, we might send them to something on info security provisions and changing laws and so forth. So it's kind of we do some things internally, then we allow for things externally, and then probably every couple years, once we've had a decent amount of turnover, we'll bring in a third party to kind of maybe do a day or two negotiations boot camp or best practices of procurement. But that is more kind of depending on where we are in our own cycle than a specific annual thing.
Well, that's great. I know we're right at just at the edge of the end of our webinar, so I wanted to thank everyone honestly for tuning in today. Adam, thank you so much for jumping into this. I know you jumped on it. We turned it around really quickly. I greatly appreciated it. And thank you for sharing your house with us. So till the next time.
Yeah, happy to. I appreciate everyone for making a little time to listen. And you see my email address there. Feel free to reach out. Happy to talk and dialogue and learn about what's working for you as well. Thank you.
Yeah, excellent. And then post-webinar, we're trying to make these like events. So this was sort of our attempt to look at ISM, not ISM, ProcureCon East. And so, we've got some prizes. We've got like a little booth demo. So if anyone wants to do anything, it's our hope that you might want to talk to us. But if not, we've got, again, Adam's information, and this will be available as a replay. So thanks everyone for coming today. And until next time.